Hello, one and all, and welcome to another episode of Baggers Chat. My name's Mitchell Pattinson, and as always, I'm joined by Ethan Daffy. And today it's a little bit of a different type of video. Usually we try and do the review and previews of the Carlton matches, and obviously we just had one with the Pracky match with Sydney. But today we're doing a predictions video, so it will be a little bit of Carlton, but also a little bit on the league as itself. But more importantly, Daffy, how are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. It's it's getting closer and closer now. I think it's 9 days. So next Thursday after this week is it's going to be a big one under the lights, the MCG paddo. So the nerves are starting to kick in, and there's always doubts. There's always doubts for every side. You always think of what could we be better at? What could we improve? But I think I back this team in to have a good year, mate.
Spot on. And that's the thing. It's 9 days now, and it's next Thursday, and it's just it's crazy how quickly that's going. Because probably about maybe a few months ago we were looking at it. It was like 150 days. We were like, 150 days till round one. There was 100. I was like, we're counting down the days. But now it's 9 days away, and we've kind of seen everything that Carlton that has had to offer. I mean, to touch on the practice match just a little, we went down to Sydney by quite a fair few points. We lost, I think it was just over 50 points, or maybe just under. But it was quite, I said to you after the game, I looked I thought I was kind of worried, but I know that you were kind of the opposite, thinking that it is a practice game. I think that's just me. I always want the Blue Baggers to do well, but I think the players were, it's not like they were trying, but we want to see how things go before we get into the real thing round one. Yeah. But just a small recap over that game. How'd you think of the Pracky game?
Yeah, so I've actually watched the second half a few times, actually, just to really, just get around different players and see how they go. But for mine, a few podcasts I've listened to have just said we've kind of gone for a different approach this preseason. And I feel like every preseason we go really hard in the games. Like, you know what I mean? Like when we've been a kind of struggling team, you know what I mean? Like we go so hard and we still sometimes lose Pracky games. So I feel like we're in, first or second gear, to be honest, in that Sydney game, which, you can look at it as a problem, but you can also see it as a positive as well. We've got a massive season ahead. There's 24 rounds this season. So we really want to be getting, being fit and, ready to fire later on in the season, especially. I thought that's where we kind of hurt ourselves last year. But I think, you can't really judge too much, but there was some good bits and pieces from different players. So it was good to see.
Yeah, definitely. Is there any players in particular that is kind of a secure spot in that round one team that might actually be able to jump this year for Carlton?
I think it's the man I've been talking about a fair bit. I think it's Lachie Cowan, mate. I think the Blues fans are starting to talk about him now, and I think it was about 3-4 months ago I was already talking about the kid, but he's got the body to be an AFL player. What is he, 19 years old, which is ridiculous. That clip where he got bumped by, Jordan McLean or something like that, and then he got up and tackled. It was just amazing stuff, and that's stuff that lifts the team, especially in round one. But round one is different. Under the lights, MCG, it's going to be sold out. Richmond fans yelling at you, Carlton fans getting up and about. It's a whole different. It's a roller coaster that Thursday night. I think it's just such a different occasion compared to all of our other games. Like we have big games throughout the year, but there's something about round one. But and just another name everyone knows. We all love him, George Hewitt. He's in our top 5 most important players. I'll just put it out there right now.
And it is such an important game. And also to touch on Cowan, I think he got hit by Hayden McLean, the ruckman, and I think it was just he just got straight back up, and that's against a mature sort of ruckman and a big body like that. And for a 19-year-old to kind of get straight back up and lay that next tackle, it's great to see. And I reckon that as soon as we saw that, I reckon that was everyone was kind of talking about in Carlton saying this guy's play round one. So, so now we'll kind of get into the prediction side of it. We're going to start off with the Carlton stuff, just because obviously later on this is a Carlton podcast, but later on we'll touch on a little bit more of the league. So obviously with the Carlton fans, if you want to tune in for the whole video, please do. But we will be touching on the Carlton side of things and also the league side of things as well. But to start off, the best and fairest, who do you think is going to win the best and fairest for Carlton, Daffy boy?
it's a tough pick now with so many good players. You know, you got Sardi and all those guys being really close last year, Doc, and obviously, Cripper taking out. But for me, I think if he plays a full season, I think it's going to be Jacob Wiedering, Pato. I think he's, what is he, 25 this year? 25, 26? I think 25 this year. And geez, he's looking massive this year again. He's like a brick wall to play on. But I think he's definitely again one of those guys, and probably the top five, top six, top seven, top players in our team. So I think it's going to be Jacob Wiedering, Pato, and if he's out, it's a big hole for us. I think it really tested our depth. I think it was that Freo game where he was out, and we had Brody Kemp playing fullback. So Wiedering's just massive for us, mate.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with how we've got a lot of options now to get that BNF, because obviously last year with Cripps, but also Sam Walsh maybe coming back round 1, round 2 to kind of really add on to that depth. And we kind of also speak about George Hewitt, but my name's Adam Chera. I've gone for Adam Chera. Yeah, I've gone Chera. So we spoke about it a little bit before we started recording, and how Kane Corns was kind of riffing into Adam Chera, a bit like Walshy, about how he doesn't really use the ball too well. He's a bit of he kind of gets his 20, but it's not too effective. He said that his kickings are, in other words, quite shit. But not too sure about that, because I reckon in the Collingwood game, he really impressed me. Not too sure about the Sydney game, but once again, I don't know if I would really look too much into that, because their midfield just absolutely really dismantled us in a way. So I think they were really good. But Adam Chera for mine, I think he's now in that bracket where it's is now starting to become one of those elite midfielders in the comp. He's still not there yet, but I think he's definitely got the potential to step up. And if he starts well in that season, and especially with Walsh not being there, if Chera can try and maybe secure that maybe second best midfielder behind maybe a Cripper and also a George Hewitt in there as well, I think I've gone for Adam Chera. But it's two good picks, because it's not like we're choosing like a Sam Walsh or a George Hewitt or a Paddy Cripps or even a Harry Mackay or Charlie Kerner up forward. We're choosing other names. So, and I think Chera's going to have a huge season, and same thing for Jacob Wiedering. But now we'll move on to a little bit of an easier option. It's pretty much between two names, but there might be some new names as well. But obviously the leading goal kicker, who do you think will win the leading goal kicking?
Well, this guy, he had his really first season back after 2 years. I think it has to be Charlie Kerno. I think Mark Robinson had him as number 1. He's going to be the best player in the competition by the end of 2023, you reckon? So, honestly, I think Charlie's the man. I think he's the type of guy I reckon he could push, 75, 80 goals. Like if he really gets going, early in the year, gets a big block of goals in. I don't think there's anything stopping him. And, the way he plays his football is just amazing, really. Like for a guy, he's a tall guy. Like I don't think people realise that. He's a tall man and can play on the ground, can play in the air, he can kick goals from anywhere. So it's going to be Charlie Kerno, man. I think I'm going to pick him for 74 goals this year. I'm going to pick him for 74 goals.
That's a big number, because that's including finals as well. So that could even go, I mean, if you go far in finals, I mean, we need to make it first, Happy Boy. But if we go far in finals, who knows? That could be quite a big number, because there's people who are saying like the 100 goals might be back. And names that, I mean, especially with Mackay and Kerno, but I don't think Franklin will be up there, but even like a Jeremy Cameron might be a chance. Like Jeremy Cameron's still got a bit of his career left in him, but my name's the other forward, Harry Mackay.
Really?
And I think the Collingwood game kind of secured it for me. How much he's improved over this off-season, but also with Charlie Kerno being there and Finn firing, and kind of a lot of people kind of turning now to, Charlie Kerno is now that number 1 forward. Kind of now it gives Mackay now the chance to kind of, for a redemption season, not saying that his last season was shit, but a little bit more like now that he's got a little bit of redemption with him, because some people might think Kerno's a little bit high now, but Mackay might bring that back to even. And if we have two genuine key forwards who are a genuine chance to win the Coleman Medal, it's pretty, I mean, hopefully Coleman Medal, but if we just get the leading goal kicker for Carlton, I think it's going to be great. So I think Harry Mackay or Charlie Kerno are the two options. But we'll now move on to the biggest improver. There are, I assume, a few names that you have in your head, but I know that with me, there's this one name that really stands out. But I want to get your first biggest improver.
Yeah, there's a lot of players I thought improved massively last year. Lockie O'Brien's. I thought Lockie O'Brien was, fantastic last year. He had a massive improvement, and obviously one of Aussie's favourites there on the wing. For mine, it's a guy who he showed a lot of glimpses, more than glimpses for mine. I think, he's a little forward pocket, and I think he can really step up his game and go for 20, 30 goals this year, and it's going to be Jesse Motlop for mine. Not saying he had a bad season last year when he played. I thought he was very good. I just think, a bit more. He looks bigger as well. It looks much bigger. He's explosive. He's got that energy about him, especially in that last game against Collingwood last year, round 23. Geez, those goals he was kicking. He can kick those, every week. Those are goals you can create out of nothing. You don't have to get a Harry to lead up, or the ball can hit the ground. He can just pick it up and snap a goal. Like, it can really change the momentum of the game. It's really how Eddie Betts used to play for us. He'd be at, Favola's feet. He might not be having a good game, and Eddie Betts kicks a few goals out of nothing and really changes the whole landscape of the game. And yeah, I think Jesse Mollop's going to be the biggest improver, Pato.
Well, Dave, I completely agree. I completely agree with Mollop's mine as well. I think, especially towards the end of the season, there's this one moment that really stood out for me as to why this kid's going to be such a good player is that goal against Collingwood when he kicked the left foot snap kind of like the wrong side that you're not really meant to kick a left foot snap from there. And when he kicked that and he got the crowd up and going, like, that was just fantastic. And I think Jesse Motlop, there's a few names there, maybe even a Brody Kemp might be one of those players that might finally get going. I don't know, even like a Paddy Dow, I'm not too sure. But I think Jesse Motlop's that one guy that really stood out for me and is that one name that if he can get going, and we all know that he's going to be that small forward, that first pick for round one, and it's down to whoever's going to be that other small forward. But I think Jesse Motlop's going to be great this year. I think if he starts well, his confidence will only go skyrocket from there. And I reckon he's a pretty, well, I mean, this is going to be put out there, but he's maybe a chance for All-Australian because he's quite young. I don't want to put much pressure on him, but is that type of player that there's not many small forwards now that can really electrify and really take the game by the scruff of the neck in a way. So I think maybe like a Tom Papley is one of those guys, but he's not really been talked about much this preseason. So there's not many other small forwards that are being talked about, and obviously us being biased, Jesse Motlop's a great chance, but I think there's in those small forwards, they are the ones that can really take the game away from the opponents. So Jesse Motlop, I think, is in for a great season. He's been fit, and most importantly, he's had a full preseason. So his second year, but no expectations, of course. But move on now to the surprise packet. I know that. Well, I think mine's pretty. I don't know. I hope. Well, I think you might have it, but we'll see. But surprise packet, Daffy Boy. Who do you think from Carlton?
For me, it's always tough every year thinking about a surprise packet, because it's like, how do you determine that? Is it just, are they improving, or is it just a guy who been playing twos last year, etc.? But for mine, I think this guy could have a solid chance of playing a halfback round one, and it's going to be Alex Chincotta. And I think it's someone we've kind of been looking for, like in terms of his size. He can play halfback. He's had time in the VFL, obviously in the Carlton system. I think he put on like 10, 15 kilos over the last 2 or 3 seasons. So he's obviously got a mature body. He's 26. It's a good age for Carlton as well. So I think he could play, over a dozen games of football for Carlton this year. I think, it'll be between him and I think maybe Cowan for round one, depending on the whole situation with Marchie and Gov round one. But I think, if he's playing round one, I'm not going to be worried. I think he's ready for the challenge. And we picked him up on the last day of the preseason supplementary period. So I hope he goes well, because he's really earned his spot on the list. So it's going to be Alex Chincotta for mine, Pato.
I did have a feeling you were going to say that, because of course I've got Alex Chincotta as well. I've got him. I've got the man. Because I was writing it down, I have a feeling Duffy might write down Lockie Cowan, but no, I didn't see Cotter. Completely agree. You said there about the age, how he's 26. He's that mature body now, and you saw it in the VFL how good he was. VFL B, I think he was VFL BNF.
Yeah, he might have been. I think he was second in the Carlton VFL BNF behind Paddy Dow. So it's a pretty good effort, actually.
Of course. Yeah, so sorry. I mean, probably other than, out of all the VFL players that were there
Oh,
last year, he was by far the best player. So, and yeah, just the age and how how he used the ball. I think he had
yeah,
80% efficiency of saying in the game against Sydney. I
yeah,
think he was maybe top three for. I don't know if it was Carlton players or game high, but
yep,
and I think the way that he kind of used the ball, he was kind of attacking as well. And it was a bit like
yeah,
Starling, like obviously not as attacking because he doesn't really have that speed, but he's also the guy that doesn't really mind taking a risk. And even if
hmm
he does, he's a bit like Cowan. If he does make a risk, if he does take a risk and makes a mistake, he moves on. He doesn't worry about it for the rest of the game. So I reckon that's a great pick. I don't know if it's Sin Cotter or Chin Cotter because I used to know a kid that was Sin Cotter, but I don't know
yeah.
if it's Chin Cotter. But I think a lot of people were saying Chin Cotter, Sin Cotter. I don't even know. So I'm going to say Alex Chin Cotter, but I reckon he's absolutely fantastic. But the last one we're going to choose for Carlton before we get onto the AFL season predictions is the ladder position for Carlton. So
Okay.
this is tough. This is tough because it's going to be there's obviously a few clubs that you don't really know who's going to finish where, and also we don't know where we're going to finish, whether we're really going to go for a big jump or if we're going to just stay around that mark of the top 8 or maybe outside. But ladder position, Duffy Boy, what do you think?
Yeah, it's tough, Pato. I honestly think we should be pushing the top 4. But for mine, I think just getting there, I think we'll be 5th. I think we'll be 5th. And I know this is not the question, but I think we'll go deep in finals. I think if we can get 5th, get a win under our belt against 8th, put pressure on someone in a semi-final. Imagine the Baggers at the G against a team who's just lost a qualifying final. I don't think the team would want that realistically, but I think we'll be 5th. But it's close. It could be 4th, 5th, but 5th for mine.
Yeah. I do agree with. I don't think we'll be we could be top 4. That's the thing. We have the potential to be top 4, but it's quite tough to put us in top 4 since we did make the finals. But there is always that team that is
Yeah.
outside the finals that jumps up. There's always that team. So I reckon a little bit unbiased because I don't really want to be too biased towards Carlton, but I put us 6th. So
Yeah.
I put us around that home elimination final. I don't know exactly who it will be. I have a feel, and I don't know why. I have a feeling we're going to be playing Fremantle. So I have a feeling that it's not going to be a Victorian side that we're going to be playing against, but I feel like it's going to be a Fremantle. I don't know why. I've always had that in my mind. But I just think that it's our time. It's our time. And if we can get a home elimination final or even an elimination final and win that, as you said, then we can, like, wherever we play, if we have to play buddy Gold Coast Suns in the Metricon Stadium for the semi-finals, if we or even North Melbourne down in Tassie, but even for the semi-final, I'm pretty sure if we make a final that is interstate, all the baggers are going to try and get down there. I reckon no matter what, it's going to be a full stadium, and I just can't wait for the season to start. I know that this is probably the best time for all clubs to kind of just we get around all the hype and really just see how our club goes. Hopefully, we can start as well as we did last year. But we have a tough draw to start off with. But after that, if we can maybe get 1-1 or maybe 2-0, we can really set up our season from there. So that's obviously all done for the Carlton predictions. But now we'll move on to a little bit more broad, which is now the AFL predictions. So we'll go through the individual awards and also a top 4, and then obviously the grand final teams and also the premiership winner that we think will get the job done. But to start off, Brownlow medalist, Daffy Boy. There's a lot of options, but who do you think?
It's tough. It's honestly really tough because you got teams that they have so many. Like, they have a few candidates for the Brownlow. I think in Melbourne, you obviously got Oliver and Petrarca who take votes of each other and end up not winning the award, but get really close every year. And obviously both worthy winners if they ever do end up winning it. But for mine, I think this guy he was close last year. I thought it was going to be a tie between him and Cripper, and I think it's going to be Tuke Miller. I think he just has so many good games. But the problem is how many wins the Suns get. I think if they get around that 10 mark, maybe 9, 10 mark, I think he can get the Brownlow medal. And he's a fantastic player because he's really under the radar just because he's in Gold Coast. Like if he was playing for Collingwood or Essendon or Carlton, he'd be talked about a lot. He would be talked about a lot, and the Victoria media would get around him. So I think it's going to be Took Miller. And I'm fingers crossed the Suns go all right this year because, I'm kind of sick of him being crap. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, give him a chance. But it'll be interesting.
Yeah. To quickly touch on Gold Coast, I think, especially with if they have a fit list, I think that's when they can kind of really jump. They do have one of the best key forwards in the game, backing Ben King. So let's hope they're not better than us, but let's hope they can really try and jump up the ladder because if they can get a finals berth, I reckon that would be great to see. And I think Tuke Miller is going to be that leader to really try and lead them towards maybe a finals berth. But I did have Tuke Miller for a very long time, but ever since his injury, that's just worried me just a little. I know he's a type of player and he's very much like Walshy that when he gets an injury, he's very professional about it. So I don't think that's going to affect his season too much. But I've always wanted to try and go for players who has had a full preseason that's looked really good in the preseason games. And my player is Marcus Bontempelli.
Wow.
Yeah, I've gone for the Bont. So that was a little bit. There's a lot of people, a lot of experts that are saying Bontempelli that's going to really try and lead them to the finals, but I don't think the Western Bulldogs are going to make the finals. So that's one thing about Bont is that I want him to have a great season. I think he deserves a Brownlow. He's such a good player that I think he's pretty much it'll be kind of a waste if he doesn't win a Brownlow. But I don't think the Brownlow really matters too much nowadays. With the players aren't going to be like, oh, I dream about a Brownlow. They're more thinking, I dream about a premiership medal. So I think that Bont is a chance to, if he can really start to get going. But the only problem is he has also Jack McRae. But without Josh Dunkley there, maybe that sets up a little bit of more of a midfield genuine role for Marcus Bontempelli. But we'll now move on to the Coleman medalist. I think I don't know exactly who you got, Duffy Boy, but so I'll get you on Coleman medalist.
Charlie Curnow. Enough said. No, I think he will. I think he'll step up again. I think it'll be neck and neck between him and Tom Lynch for mine. I think he missed a fair few games and almost won it last year. So hopefully Lynchy can, rest up round one and then hit the season run in round two. But I think it'll be between him and Tom Lynch for mine. But I think Curnow will edge him out.
Yeah. I had Tom Lynch for a long time. I feel like I've had a few names for a long time, but once again, Tom Lynch was a little bit injured. So I've gone with Jeremy Cameron. Wow. I think Tom Hawkins will kind of he won't play as much football towards the end of the year because the bigger Sava will come in and probably take his role, I reckon. But I think Jeremy Cameron is a type of player that can kick 100. So I think if he has a good season, and Geelong will be up there. So I think he'll probably I think he's going to be a pretty good player, a pretty good chance to win the Coleman. And I think the three names are obviously Curnow, Cameron, and I have Lynch as well if he does get his body right. But also Mackay's up there as well. Like if we have two Curnow and Mackay up there to potentially win the Coleman medal, it's a great thing for Carlton. So we'll now move on to the rising star. I think this one's pretty obvious, but who do you have, Duffy Boy?
I wanted to go outside the box, but I think you have to pick this guy, and it's Will Ashcroft. I think he's already proven in the preseason. He's playing for a good side. They're going to be winning a lot of games of footy. He's got a very, very good midfield around him now. So they're going to be very good, Brisbane. I think their pass mark this year has to be a grand final for mine, but I think he'll be the rising star. But there's a few others that you could look at, Sheasels or Finn Callaghan. Is it the guy from GWS? People are talking about him. He's eligible for it too. So will be interesting, Pato.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think it's Will Ashcroft. And quick shout out to Finn Callaghan. He used to play for Morty Bray, who I used to play for junior footy. Never knew him. I don't think he would ever know who I am, but I think he's a great player. Just a great left foot. But another name that I have is Cam McKenzie from Hawthorn.
Yes.
I think he's a great chance. I don't think he's any chance to beat Ashcroft. I think Ashcroft's he's kind of like the Dacoses and the Walshes of the past few years. That he's just that big chance, and he's pretty much the hot favourite. And I think the only way that he loses it is if he gets injured. So I think Ashcroft is just a little bit too good. He's a little bit too classy, and especially with being in a good side like Brisbane, I think it's going to help him. But now we'll move on to the Wooden Spooners. So, Daffy Boy, who do you have for the Wooden Spoon?
I think it's going to be Hawthorn for mine. I think they're going to bottom out this year. I honestly don't see it as an issue for them. I think they've just got to really just back in their kind of process. And they've gone really young. Obviously, they've got O'Meara out now and Mitchell out and Gunston out. It's all their experience straight out the door, apart from Luke Bruce, who was linked for Carlton for a few days there. But I think they'll be bottom. I don't think they'll be winning many games this year. I think they've got a lot of youngsters through the midfield as well now with Newcombe and obviously Cam McKenzie that you touched on before. So I think it's going to be the Hawks, mate.
Completely agree. I've had Hawthorn ever since the round 23 last year. I reckon they are just that rebuilding sort of side. They've got talent, but I think it's a little bit like there's a few clubs that, whether it's a Giants or even like a West Coast or a North Melbourne, but I think West Coast, North and Giants are just that little bit better than Hawthorn. And it's quite stiff on Sam Mitchell because I reckon he's actually quite a good coach. But it's good that he's now got a bit of young talent that in a few years' time, hopefully he's still coach. He can really try and take Hawthorn back to where they were a couple of years ago. So now we'll go a little bit more towards the upper side of the table. We'll go top four. So first, second, third, and fourth. Who do you have, Duffy Boy?
All right, I'll go from fourth up. Sydney fourth, Geelong third, Brisbane second, Melbourne first. So for mine, I think you look at Max Gawn and Brodie Grundy, I think they're going to be amazing. I think that's going to be an absolutely amazing duo. I thought they really struggled at the back end of the last year. They're winning some games still, but they just look tired, didn't they? They look really tired, and they've just added Lockie Hunter onto the wing as well. Like, what the hell, man? But yeah, I think there'll be Melbourne, Brisbane, Geelong, and Sydney, mate.
Yeah. Mine are the exact same teams, a little bit different order. So I'll go from fourth as well. So Sydney fourth, I have the same. Melbourne, I've got third. Melbourne, I do rate Melbourne. But I think the two teams are just a little bit better, which is obviously Brisbane second. I had them first for a long time, but I think Geelong are just a little bit more classier than Brisbane. So Brisbane second, Geelong first. Geelong just keep doing it, man. Every single year. So I think it's going to be Geelong, Sydney qualifying final, and Brisbane, Melbourne the other qualifying final. So now we'll move on to the big thing, the grand final teams and the premiership winner. Daffy Boy, I want your grand final teams and who's going to take the cup at the end of that game.
Okay, so I don't think I'm going to rule out the two top four teams. All right, it's not going to be Geelong or Sydney. I think Geelong will not make the grand final. I think they're good enough to win the premiership, right? But I just do not think for some reason they will not make the grand final this year. I think it's going to be Melbourne v Brisbane at the MCG. Big O facing Gorney and Grundy at under the 2:30 p.m. sunrise, whatever. And I think it's going to be a bit like what Richmond did 2017, missed 18, won 19. I think it's going to be D's 2021, missed 2022, won 2023. I think with the addition of Grundy and Hunter and a few others, I think that's how premiership teams end up winning a fair bit. I think Richmond always added different players. Like 2019, they added Lynch. They're not complacent, but they continue to add and not be happy and satisfied with how their list is. They just keep improving. So I think it's going to be the Melbourne Demons, and they're going to win by 22 points.
Hey, 22. All right. So I do agree, somewhat. So, my grand finalist is obviously Brisbane. I've got them to make the grand final, and Sydney. I've got Sydney to go to the grand final, Duffy Boy. I think they've got redemption for last year, but this is when it doesn't really turn into redemption. So I've got Brisbane to win the premiership. So yeah, I do feel quite stiff on Sydney just because they are looking for that redemption season. I think they're still so good. Some people don't have Sydney in their top 8, which I find astounding. I think it's too good, but I think Brisbane, it's their time right now to really take that next step towards a premiership. And I reckon it really is the addition of a Dunkley and a Gunston, and maybe even a McKenna can really get going. He can really electrify that the back line. So I reckon Brisbane for me to win the cup. But Other than that, that's all for our predictions. As we spoke about at the start of the episode, it's 9 more days until round 1. Carlton v Richmond. I know that we're both locked in for the Thursday night clash. Absolutely can't wait. 7:20 p.m. at the MCG. But anything else you want to touch on, Duffy boy?
Nothing else, mate. Just excited. Just keen to watch some footy.
Spot on. And make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the podcast around. And as always, Duffy boy, up the burgers!